lessons of the past were all learned with workers' blood. Mistakes of the bosses we must pay for. From the cities and the farmlands to trenches full of mud. War has always been the bosses' way, sir. The Union forever defending our rights. Down with the black leg, all workers unite. With our brothers and our sisters from many far off lands. There is power in our union. Now I long for the morning that they realise brutality and unjust laws cannot defeat us.
Happy Labor Day to my Oregon Union family. My name is Graham Trainer. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm proud to serve as president of the Oregon AFL-CIO, the statewide federation of labor unions, and a voice for anyone who works for a living in this great state of ours. But before we get started with today's program, I'd like to say just a quick word about the late President Rich Trumka, who we lost almost exactly 1 month ago. While we've all been grieving and mourning his incalculable loss, I know for a fact that Rich would want nothing more from us to honor his legacy than to be here today, carrying forward the fight, planning for the future, and redoubling our commitment to this fight. The fight to give more workers the transformational, life-changing opportunity of joining or forming a union, and for ensuring that the labor movement plays an increasingly important role in defending democracy in the workplace and at the ballot box. And I know our friend and fellow Oregonian, President Liz Shuler, sees this moment that way. And I know you will join me in carrying forward his legacy through action. Okay, thank you for joining us again this year for what we all hope will truly be our last virtual Labor Day celebration and call to action. Because we all want to get back to Salem's Riverfront Park, or Immigrant Lake in Ashland, or Ben's Pioneer Park, or Willamette Lane's Lively Park in Springfield, or of course Oaks Park in Portland. We all are yearning to get back to some sense of normal, back to the traditional Labor Day picnics and events in every corner of the state that we know and love. Picnics and gatherings where we celebrate our wins, rest up for future fights, and honor the sacrifice of those who have come before us in the struggle for economic and social justice. And just a quick and big shout out and thank you to all of those fantastic Labor Council, chapter, and affiliate union leaders who make Labor Day so special for our movement each year. Now, we've got an exciting program for you today with some very special guests and friends of labor from Oregon's congressional delegation, as well as a panel of impressive leaders and members to share their powerful stories that highlight the need for change and the need for action. So stay tuned for the full hour as we gather to learn, get energized, and recommit to the fights ahead. And if you're an elected official or candidate for office with us today, please throw your name and information in the comments section so that folks know that you're here. Now, there's no question that it's been a long, hard, devastating 18 months for everyone, and especially frontline and essential workers, hitting workers of color and women even harder, who are now facing horrific challenges as the Delta variant rages through our communities and fills our hospitals with sick patients. And we in the labor movement know that the best way to support these frontline workers is by getting the vaccine if you haven't already done so, wearing a mask, avoiding large indoor gatherings, and continuing to socially distance. But we also know that just protecting ourselves, our families, and our communities from the virus isn't enough. We need action from our leaders at every level of elected office to not only beat the virus and keep us safe, but to rebuild in a better, more resilient, more worker-centered way. That's one of the reasons why I'm so excited about today's program, because we'll hear from workers about the challenges that they face and how congressional action can help them. And we'll hear about some amazing work that's been done in our nation's capital over the last 9 months that directly affects the lives of working people in Oregon, as well as a ton of important work ahead in this Congress. Now, since last year's Labor Day celebration, working Americans turned a page on the direction of our country. We campaigned around the clock last November for change. We were laser focused on change that puts workers first. And workers won when we elected the most pro-union president in history. Workers won when we maintained pro-worker control of the United States House. And the labor movement won in Georgia, where we secured a razor-thin pro-worker majority in the United States Senate. And this change It's already had some dramatic impacts on the lives of working Americans. This change was felt when President Biden signed the American Rescue Plan, the game-changing package that had the kind of pro-worker investments in it that we had been fighting for since the beginning of the pandemic. This change has been felt with the kinds of appointments that President Biden has made, including a card-carrying union member as our Secretary of Labor in Marty Walsh. And this change has the potential to continue with aggressive budget and policy gains in the coming months. Now, on this Labor Day, as we honor, reflect, and recommit to the struggles for justice ahead, we must acknowledge the gravity of the challenges in front of us, too. Our very democracy is under threat today. From decades of growing inequality, the dismantling of workers' rights, a scourge of attacks on voting rights, and the failure to adequately invest in our families and in our communities. Now, make no mistake, passing the Protect the Right to Organize Act is the #1 priority for the labor movement. But we also know that our fight to save democracy in the workplace is interconnected with our fight to save democracy at the ballot box. And right now, these fundamental fights for democracy are facing a logjam in the United States Senate. The rules of the Senate, the filibuster. And as the late President Rich Trumka said in one of his last speeches, it has become clearer than ever to save American democracy, we need democracy in the United States Senate. And that means passing labor law reform and voter protection legislation with a simple 50-vote majority. We cannot allow the minority to block the will of the American people that was expressed decisively in the 2020 elections. Now, it's clear to each and every one of us that the fights for justice are relentless, even in the midst of celebrating some critical long-sought gains. Whether it was the United States Supreme Court's anti-union decision back in June, making it harder for farm workers to come together in union, or the despicable attacks on women and their reproductive freedoms in Texas last week that was then upheld by the Supreme Court, a day doesn't go by without a stark and often dangerous reminder of how far we still have to go to create a truly just, fair, and equitable economy and society for all of us. And these types of setbacks have been happening all during, of course, one of the most devastating periods in our history. But the thing I know, and something I'm incredibly proud to be a part of, is the resilience, the tenacity, the smarts, and the unwavering commitment of the Oregon labor movement. That will always keep fighting, always hold the line, and always move forward. Now, I'm excited to introduce the first part of our program with an incredible group of workers and leaders to share their stories and perspectives on the need for change. We're honored to have Senator Ron Wyden, Senator Jeff Merkley, and Congresswoman Suzanne Bonamici with us today as well. And we really appreciate their willingness to first hear from workers before they share their reflections and answer a few questions a bit later in the program. Now, I'll now turn it over to Jess Genatino Villatoro, the Oregon AFL-CIO's fantastic political and legislative director, who will moderate today's panel. Take it away, Jess.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Graham. Happy Labor Day. As Graham said, now we're going to hear directly from frontline workers who have not only kept us healthy and our economies going, while facing incredible odds and immense personal risk. Each of these folks will share with us some of their personal experiences that highlight the exact need for the Workers First agenda that Graham just described. I'll ask each panelist to introduce themselves with their name, preferred pronouns, union affiliation, and workplace, and then share their story. So first up, we have Nastia Gallagher, and she's going to share their story from organizing at Central City Concern. Thanks, Nastia.
Thank you. Yeah, my name's Nastia. I use they, she pronouns, and I have been organizing with AFSCME Council 75, and I'm a frontline worker. I work as a COVID screener and receptionist for Central City Concern in Portland, and they're basically a local nonprofit that does mental health, medical, and drug and alcohol programs for low-income and houseless folks. And we originally wanted to start organizing and become part of the union because most of our organization is already part of AFSCME Council 75, and we wanted to join them. And we also were really lacking in general funding and support for being able to help our clients. Burnout in our field is so intense, and we're constantly having to fight for just basic resources and come up with creative solutions to make sure that our clients just have their basic human rights met, get fed, and have somewhere to sleep. And we just keep coming up against walls in terms of being able to offer those to our clients because there are not resources. And we also wanted to unionize because we had some very serious safety concerns that included like weapons around the property, that included instances of homophobia and harassment and racism. And also, due to COVID, we had several outbreaks of COVID at our facility specifically. One of my coworkers was asked to clean the room of someone who had died and had COVID, and that was not in her job description. She ended up contracting COVID, as well as several other coworkers, and some of them ended up having to use all of their PTO and take unpaid time to recover from COVID, and were absolutely unsupported in their recovery and just getting the basic help that they needed. And management's response to all of these things was just really not to take these issues seriously, and we felt deeply unheard and honestly really disposable and unsafe. So we started to campaign to join the union, and we quickly reached a 65-70% majority of folks. And at that point, our management decided to host a really aggressive anti-union campaign. They came to our location and did a series of anti-union workshops. About 18 HR folks and managers were all there handing out vote no, vote against unions buttons and anti-union literature to everyone. And that whole workshop wrapped up with our executive team coming to the building, including our CEO. They all sat in front of us and each asked us to vote against the union. And it was just such a blatant disregard for all of our concerns that we had been bringing forth for some time about being unsafe and not being heard. And we, after that workshop and all of those events, we lost so much support. Not only did we end up losing the union election, but we honestly, a lot of coworkers became actively aggressive to those of us that were pro-union and hostile and really, really mean and unkind. And it was just really evident how much management had played a role in that shift. And so it's really clear to those of us that were organizing that we really need legislation like the PRO Act that keeps management from spreading lies and manipulating folks that are working on the front lines and really need the support from unions.
Thanks so much for sharing your experience with us. I'm so sorry that happened, and it's completely unacceptable, and you're right. That's why we need the PRO Act. Thanks so much for being here and sharing with us. Next up, we're going to introduce Samantha Spring. Samantha, if you just want to introduce yourself with name, union, and pronouns, that would be great.
Yeah, hi, I'm Samantha Spring, she, her, hers, and I'm a union steward with United Food and Commercial Workers Local 555. I've been working at the Beaverton Fred Meyer for going on 4 years now, and a lot has changed for what the job means for us, how COVID's changed it, and just in general, how work affects us right now. And that's why I'm excited to hear about the PRO Act, giving us and more people the opportunity to organize, because I know firsthand just how important it is to have that voice in the workplace and to be able to be heard. I first became passionate about the union membership 2 years ago when the contract negotiations had hit a stall. That summer, we voted to authorize a strike, and with that show of solidarity and power, we fought for the raise that we so badly needed at that moment. That's when I realized that there's no Fred Meyer without us. At the end of the last year, in the middle of an unprecedented pandemic, our hours were just cut in half. Business slowed, and I was left without sufficient work in order to pay rent. To make it to the 40-hour mark, I was offering help in the home department constructing furniture for display. And it was hard work. I was calling every single morning, totally uncertain if there was going to be, a sick call that I'd be able to fill in, and if there was going to be a spot for me in order to, have a full week. And if that wasn't enough, I was then harassed by management as they tried to bully me away from picking up these hours. And I knew something wasn't right with that, so I called up my union. Within the week, Allie and Tony helped me find the contract evidence that I needed to prove that I was free to pick up hours as I needed. Most importantly, I could continue to work enough to cover my needs. In this time of uncertainty, I'm the only one in my household with a steady and reliable job, and that job will stay steady and reliable thanks to organized labor in UFCW 555. When I had a COVID scare, I was able to take the time off that I needed to recover, and I didn't lose my house. I didn't lose my livelihood over it. While I was sick in bed, Allie was helping me draft emails to the HR department, and they did demand emails. They wanted proof that I was getting COVID tested. They assumed that it was not COVID. But with the union, we made it certain that I wouldn't be having to return to work until I had that clean bill of health, that negative test. Every worker in America deserves this level of protection, not only for themselves, but for their families. If your like loved ones are sick, it really shouldn't be a decision that, do you have to go to work or can you help them? You should be able to help them. That's your sick hours, and really beyond sick hours, that's time that you need. That's really all I've prepared, but thanks for hearing me out.
Thanks, Samantha, for sharing your story with us. We're so glad that UFCW helped you take the time that you needed to quarantine. And we couldn't agree more about the need for paid family and medical leave to come online. Because you're right, everybody deserves to take the time that they need to care for themselves and their family. Next up is Owen. Owen, do you want to go ahead and share your name and experiences with everyone?
Yeah, thank you, and happy Labor Day to everybody. My name is Owen Christofferson. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I'm a longtime Uber and Lyft driver, former labor organizer, and the chair of Portland's TNC Advisory Committee. Today, I'm going to talk about the experiences of app-based workers, such as Uber and Lyft drivers and others who, under the current system, are misclassified as independent contractors, and how the PRO Act could give hundreds of thousands of workers the right to unionize. I started organizing app-based drivers about 5 years ago after our pay was cut almost 30% without warning. I talked to hundreds of drivers thrust into this precarious world, people working 50 or 60 hours per week, all the while working with the fear that something such as a minor fender bender or an unexpected car repair could push them into a spiral of poverty or even homelessness. While I heard a litany of issues from the drivers, many of them stem from this current form of misclassification, which leaves workers without anti-discrimination and harassment protections, worker safety protections, sick pay, workers' compensation, and so many more hard-won labor protections afforded to workers classified as employees. Together with the Oregon AFL-CIO, we won an advisory committee with the city of Portland, giving drivers a voice to recommend policy at the local level. The city also created a team of ombudspeople who have been able to reinstate many drivers who lost their jobs by being mistakenly deactivated by the companies. We also successfully helped stop Uber and Lyft's plans for statewide legislation, protecting local communities' ability to regulate app-based ride-hail services in Oregon. But as we've sadly seen in many other industries and heard from other folks here, the pandemic exposed the exploitative realities of this work. App-based drivers and delivery workers received no pay increases, no PPE, and had to deal with unruly customers with little to no support. The misclassification of app-based workers also meant that we were ineligible for expanded unemployment insurance and instead had to navigate the complexities of PPP loans and the less generous pandemic unemployment assistance program. In my years of hearing stories from struggling drivers, one theme that emerged was childcare. Parents either having to put in hours behind the wheel on top of their full-time jobs just to pay for childcare, or utilizing the supposed scheduling flexibility of app-based work so that someone else can stay home with the kids. That's why I'm so excited about the childcare provisions in President Biden's Build Back Better agenda. Nobody should have to drive for Uber to provide their kids with the quality childcare they deserve. Misclassification of workers and corporate-backed ballot measures like California's Proposition 22 harm not only those working in the so-called gig economy, but also threaten workers more broadly. These efforts give corporations an unwelcome opportunity to outsource employee classified jobs in many different industries to gig economy companies, all the while preventing workers' ability to collectively bargain. Passing the PRO Act will create a standard of classification in all 50 states that includes at-based workers who are currently misclassified as independent contractors. The ability to be treated as an employee will give hundreds of thousands of workers across the country the dignity and respect they deserve.
Thanks, Owen, so much for sharing your experience, and especially elevating the challenges that often go unnoticed when we're talking about app-based employees and their challenges accessing and finding affordable childcare. Next up, I am really excited to introduce our last panelist. Danielle's going to share with us her experience leading incredible investments in infrastructure. Danielle, I'll kick it over to you.
Thanks, Jess. Hi, everyone. My name is Danielle Garza. I also go by Daniela, and my pronouns are she, her, and ella. And I am with LIUNA. So this is the Labor's International Union of North America out of Local 737. So we serve all of Oregon. And, I was really thinking about how I wanted to start this presentation today on Labor Day. And I'm here to talk about the importance of the bipartisan infrastructure framework deal. And as a mother, as a Latina, and as a female, I'm constantly thinking about what the world would look like in the future and what the US will look like and how Oregon will change. And I look to the workers that I get to work beside, and I think about their families. I think about today how too many people are struggling, how we are stressed and how we're tired and how we're fearful. And I think about how we're going to recover. The bipartisan infrastructure framework deal directly impacts every one of our community members, to all of our workers, all of our families, all of our friends, and all of our neighbors. The roads that we drive on and the bridges that we drive across need repairs, and our water systems severely need upgrades. But the bipartisan framework infrastructure deal is not just about upgrading or repairing our infrastructure. It's about how we can create a foundation for recovery. And it's also about how we can continue to step towards equity. And it's about our future. So for Oregon, this means repairing and rebuilding our roads and bridges with a focus on climate change mitigation, resiliency, equity, and safety for all users, and improving healthy and sustainable transportation options. And it also means that we can deliver clean drinking water to millions of American families. And this also means that we're able to connect every American to reliable, high-speed internet and upgrade our power infrastructure. But to me, this transformational leadership will also generate income for all of our economy because it creates good family wage jobs with quality healthcare and retirement benefits. And it allows our workers to fully and equally participate in our recovery efforts and in our economy. And it will also put money back into our communities to help lay the foundation for a robust and equitable recovery. So this is important. I want to see this passed. And I think that, as we go forward in this Labor Day celebration, I am just so thankful for all of our workers here. And thank you for this opportunity to speak.
Thanks so much, Danielle. That was really insightful. And I know that our upcoming speakers will have a lot to say on the infrastructure topic. I think everyone here wants to give one last big, great thank you to our panelists, from everyone at the Oregon AFL-CIO and joining us today, for sharing with us your experiences, and a big thank you for everything you do. You and your work are invaluable to Oregon. I'll now pass it back over to Graham, who will introduce our other special guests.
Okay, another big thank you to Nastia, Samantha, Owen, Danielle, and to Jess for moderating that important panel and discussion. Another virtual round of applause. Thank you all. So for the next part of our program, we'll hear from a few special guests before they take questions from the panelists that you just heard from. Our first speaker was supposed to be Senator Ron Wyden, but we just got word that he is on a leadership call with Leader Schumer and Speaker Pelosi fighting for progressive taxes. So we appreciate the update there and hope to work him in a bit later in the program. So we're going to go to our first speaker. Now I get the honor of introducing our next or our first special guest, in this case, Congresswoman Suzanne Bonamici. From her time as a state legislator here in Oregon to her career in the United States House of Representatives, the Congresswoman has always stood with the labor movement and working people. And she's no stranger to both the importance of and the challenges to passing strong labor law reform either. As a state senator here in Oregon, she played a key role in passing the Worker Freedom Act, a priority of the Oregon labor movement that was aimed at banning captive audience meetings used during organizing campaigns over 12 years ago. So fast forward to her time in Congress, serving on the House Committee on Education and Labor, where the PRO Act, the most transformational piece of labor law reform legislation we've seen since the New Deal, passed through now twice. And thanks to her strong, supportive words in committee, making the motion to send the bill out of committee, and her powerful speech on the floor in support of the PRO Act, she has never forgotten the importance of unions in our state and in our nation. So please give a warm Oregon labor welcome to another PRO Act co-sponsor and friend, Congresswoman Suzanne Bonamici. Welcome, Congresswoman. Are you there, Congresswoman?
Is my sound coming through?
Now you are.
Can you hear me? Terrific. Well, thank you so much, Graham. It's such an honor to be in this fight with you and everyone who's online today. I truly appreciate the workers who just shared their stories, Nastia, Samantha, Owen, and Danielle. And I will carry those stories with me as we work to build back better. And I want to start by acknowledging two really significant events that happened recently. Richard Trumpa's passing, which is, of course, a tremendous loss. What a champion, what a passionate advocate for working families. And I know his legacy will live on. But I also want to congratulate Liz Schuler, an Oregonian, of course, on becoming the first woman to lead the AFL-CIO. And that reflects both on her leadership and, of course, the strength of the labor movement here in Oregon. So in that kind introduction, as Graham said, I'm proud to serve as a leader on the Education Labor Committee and have been a champion for the PRO Act for several years and have been thrilled to help it pass the House not once, but twice. It is the most significant worker rights legislation to pass the House in more than 80 years. And, you know, the purpose of the PRO Act is simple and also very worthy. It is to level the playing field. It implements penalties for employers that break the law. It strengthens workers' rights to form a union and negotiate. It holds employers accountable if they illegally retaliate or fire workers for being involved in union organizing. And it restores fairness, which is so important to our economy, by closing loopholes that allow employers to misclassify workers, as we heard about today. You know, when we were passing this legislation, I thought about all the workers I'd spoken with across Oregon, and really those across the country who want to join a union and have their voice heard on the job. I want to note, proud mom alert, that my son recently organized his workplace, which is in behavioral health. So a story very similar to Nastia's. And, you know, it's already making a difference. We know that unions are important for all workers and not just for those who are members, whether it be through higher wages, better benefits, better working conditions. Those raise the standards overall for everyone. And right now, Congress has an opportunity to make historic investments, important investments, not only with the PRO Act, but also in the caregiving and workforce in our upcoming Build Back Better reconciliation bill. Build Back Better means we're acknowledging that care is an important infrastructure. It holds our families and communities together. Now, I'm a mom, and even though my kids are grown, I'm a policymaker who knew even before the pandemic that the system wasn't working. We now have this unprecedented opportunity to meet these challenges and not just build a stronger economy, build it back better in a way that doesn't leave anyone behind. You know, the care economy has faced chronic underinvestment, and fixing it is an issue of not only economic, but also racial justice. Care workers disproportionately make poverty wages, And care workers are overwhelmingly women and women of color. Just last week, I did a walk a day with Gloria, a home care worker in Beaverton, and it really reinforced to me how important this work is. Care work helps make sure that everyone in our communities can thrive, and I especially want to mention childcare. I'm going to meet tomorrow with my Oregon Child Care Advisory Board and continue to advocate for historic investment for access to affordable childcare. We've seen overwhelming support for this investment because people know they can't get back to work and provide for their families without accessible, affordable childcare. And I'll continue to work with my colleagues in the House and also my Oregon colleagues, including Senators Merkley and Wyden, until children and families have the support they need. As it turns out, it's a very good investment. And then finally, I wanted to mention voting rights. It is such an honor to have served with my friend, the late Congressman John Lewis, who I miss terribly. You know, voting rights are such an essential part of our country, and we know now they are under attack. I recently helped the House pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. What a proud moment to restore essential civil rights protections that were stripped out of the law from the 1960s by the United States Supreme Court. So now it's up to the Senate, and I know our senators are fighting hard to make sure we can restore those voting rights. So I look forward to working side by side with the Oregon AFL-CIO and the labor movement to invest in the care economy, to stand up for workers and their families, to fight for voting rights, and to build back better. So thank you and happy Labor Day.
Thanks so much, Congresswoman. So glad you could join us for another Labor Day and appreciate your leadership on so many important fronts. So now our next special guest is our own U.S. Senator Jeff Merkley. From his time as a state legislator, as Speaker of the Oregon House, and now as U.S. Senator, Jeff has never forgotten where he came from, and that is a union family. And it was a proud day for me as an Oregonian to be on the Zoom call for one of, if not the final AFL-CIO board meetings chaired by President Trumka a few months ago. A board meeting where Oregon's own Jeff Merkley was invited into the House of Labor to make the case for filibuster reform and how it's interconnected to so many other struggles for justice, from labor law reform to voting rights. A friend, also a co-sponsor of the PRO Act, and someone like Senator Wyden who didn't bat an eye when we asked him to send a letter to Mondelez Nabisco's CEO a few weeks ago supporting the striking workers. Please welcome Oregon's own and our friend, Senator Jeff Merkley.
Hi, greetings, Graham. A pleasure to be with you and with Christine and all my brothers and sisters throughout Oregon's labor movement. This Labor Day is bittersweet. It's the first one we've had without Richard Trumka. And I've been working with him on several issues over the past couple years. One was the Good Jobs in the 21st Century Act. And this was an effort to say, hey, in new areas of the economy that are growing, we have to ensure that union jobs become the norm. And so we developed a strategy, and I say we because I worked very closely with the AFL-CIO and with Richard Trumka on this, to develop tax incentives that would generate union jobs throughout the growing sustainable energy economy. Well, another issue that Richard and I were working on was this challenge of the attack on the foundation of our democracy, the ability of people to access the ballot, the issue of equal representation. The For the People Act is the fundamental act that I'm the lead sponsor of in the Senate to restore the vision of a functioning democracy for the people rather than for the powerful. It takes on gerrymandering. It ends the drawing of congressional districts to favor one party over the other, which is being done incredibly intensively in red states. And it's a direct attack on equal representation. And what it will mean is there will be an anti-union majority in the House for a very, very long time to come if we allow this type of gerrymandering to continue and to intensify. So that's incredibly important to the values that we believe in and the battles that we fight. It doesn't affect the Senate, but it sure has a big impact on the House of Representatives. The second is to end dark money. Now, if you and I make a donation to a campaign, we go onto a list, a public list. Everybody can see we made the donation. But billionaires who are running third-party independent campaigns, their names never appear. This is it's called dark money because nobody knows where it comes from. And it allows corporations and wealthy individuals to buy elections, billionaires buying elections. And I can't think of anything that would cause our founders to roll in the grave that our country, the vision of for the people government, has been taken over by billionaires buying elections. So we have to end it. And the third is defending the freedom of every American to vote. And right now we see in 14 states all of these laws designed to target specific groups within the states to keep them from voting. Black Americans, Latino Americans, poor Americans, urban Americans, Native Americans. No, one of the last speeches that Richard Trump gave in July was at a press conference to support the passage of my For the People Act. And I thought a great way to honor him would be to read the words, the start of that speech he gave. So here it goes. Envision him standing on the street in Black Lives Matter Plaza just outside the White House. And here's what he said. Good morning. Welcome to the House of Labor, here on Black Lives Matter Plaza, in the shadow of the White House. 1 year ago, in the wake of the protests that happened on the street against racial injustice, America lost one of our greatest guardians of democracy, Congressman John Lewis. Take a look at this picture. The determination, the passion, the humility. I feel John with us today. I feel his love. I feel his fight. I feel his hope for what we can do together. I feel his anger at what is happening all around us. John's devotion to democracy brought him within an inch of his death. But Congressman Lewis lived, and he lived to fight for us, and now we must honor that legacy with action. John Lewis understood the link between democracy at the ballot box and democracy in the workplace. Without the right to vote, there is no democracy. Without the right to form a union, there is no democracy. Nothing less than our freedom is on the line. Well, I can tell you all that truer words have never been spoken. Our democracy is under attack, both with the attack on unions and the attack on the ballot box. And so, Oregon brothers and sisters, we have to pass the For the People Act. Now, it should be bipartisan, because if you poll Democrats and Republicans across the country, members of both parties say they believe in equal representation. They don't think billionaires should buy election. They defend the ballot box. But in the U.S. Senate, it's a different story. Under Mitch McConnell's leadership, all 50 of the Republicans are lined up to block the ballot box, continue gerrymandering, put it on steroids, if you will, accentuate it, and keep those billionaires buying elections. Well, currently I have 49 sponsors for the bill, but I need 50. And so I've been working with Leader Schumer and Joe Manchin and 5 other senators to get the bill that all 50 of us will support. And we've worked out all the major issues. So we're going to get this bill. It'll be maybe called something other than For the People, but it will be the same basic bones of the bill, taking on these 3 big issues. So once we have those 50 plus a vice president, we can pass this bill, except that we have a problem in the Senate. And the problem is called the filibuster. Now, the filibuster, it's a word for piracy, comes from the word freebooter. And it was considered piracy because the Senate's supposed to operate by majority making the decisions, not the minority. But using the tactic of speaking for length, the minority could take over and delay things. And delaying things wasn't so bad. But after 1975, you no longer had that kind of true filibuster where people had to speak to delay. What you had was no one has to show up, no effort has to be made. All that has to happen is the minority walks away from the vote. If you don't have 60 votes to close debate, then you get a no-show, no-effort veto. And that's what Mitch McConnell's using. He's using it right now to stop the PRO Act. He's using it right now to stop the For the People Act. So quite simply, what we have is a tyranny of the minority for the powerful over the people. Now, our founders actually warned us against this tyranny because they had a supermajority like that in the congressional body that preceded our first Constitution. And this Confederation Congress required a supermajority, and they saw that it paralyzed the place. Hamilton said it will lead to tedious delays and contemptible compromises. And Madison said it will undermine the premise of a republic, which is the minority rather than the majority is making the decisions. So we have to end this. And I'm very, very pleased that I had the chance to speak to the leadership of AFL-CIO. And in March of last year, they said absolutely. We're all for restoring the Senate to good function. It shouldn't be a deep freeze that is wiping out the ability of bills to help the people of the United States of America. Now, we could do a carve out for voting rights, but I'm arguing for something else. I'm arguing for the vision of the talking filibuster, where the minority can slow things down, but they can't paralyze the place. So they can slow things down, so make sure the public can see the bill, make sure the members can see the bill, make sure everyone who's interested understands what's in it. They can seek compromise, they can seek amendments, but in the end, a majority gets to make the decision. That's the talking filibuster. And I hope we can do that, because then not only will we have that pathway for voting rights, we will have that way for the PRO Act. We will have that pathway to be able to take on issues like climate change. And we see the fires raging through our state. We'll have that pathway to take on healthcare and housing and education and living wage jobs. We'll be able to take on the issue of good union jobs in every emerging part of the economy. We'll be able to pass that PRO Act. So that is the challenge we face. And Trumka had it exactly right when he said, without the right to vote and without the right to unionize, there is no democracy, and nothing less than freedom is on the line. I know that all of you are going to carry on the fight here in Oregon. Thank you. Thank you to you all for being so engaged in our state. And of course, here we have voting rights well secured. It's immune, if you will, to the issue of all these strategies, because we have vote by mail. And it's actually why President Trump opposed vote by mail, was because it countered all of these efforts to manipulate the election. And in DC, we lost a real champion. And it's a huge loss, but a movement is bigger than any one person. And I am thrilled that the labor movement in the United States of America will now be led by our very own Liz Shuler. So congratulations to her. And I sure look forward to working with her as I was able to work with President Trumka. Thank you all. Happy Labor Day. This is a critical moment, September and October. We have to proceed to pass a reconciliation bill that has a care economy that Congresswoman Bonamici was just speaking about, and so much more. We have to be able to pass the For the People Act, and to defend the democracy in our United States from tyranny of the majority and tyranny of the powerful over the people. And we have to be able to pass the PRO Act. So let's get it done. I'll be there fighting with you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Senator, for those powerful words and connecting the dots for so many of us around the interconnectivity around voting rights, workers' rights, and filibuster reform and the rules of the Senate. So always a treat to have you. Now we're going to transition, unless we've got Senator Wyden with us yet, we're going to transition to a brief Q&A with the panelists from earlier. So I believe they're going to come back onto the screen with both the Congresswoman and Senator Merkley. And I believe Samantha has the first question. Samantha.
Yeah, hi there. So I'd like to ask, how does the PRO Act make it easier for workers to stand in solidarity with each other and address the labor issues?
So maybe Congresswoman, do you want to take a stab? And
Sure. I just want to make sure you can hear me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great. Terrific. Well, it does remove the barriers, and importantly, what it does is make sure that all of the efforts that employers make to retaliate or fire workers, make sure that those are all going to be, those employers are all going to be held accountable. So that way workers can get together, they can meet, they can organize without that fear of retaliation. So it really puts those consequences on the employer for interfering with the rights of employees to bargain to form the union. So like we did in Oregon, banning captive audience meetings and things like that. So this way, the workers will have their rights. They'll be able to move forward with their forming the union without that fear that is so prevalent, and we heard about it even today from Nadia, that there will be some sort of repercussion for working, doing what workers should do, get together and discuss why it's important to form a union. So really bringing back that accountability.
Great. Thanks, Congresswoman. Senator, you want to add anything?
No, I think that pretty well covers it. You know, I was really struck when I first came to the Senate, because our plan was to vote on card check, which would have greatly facilitated forming unions, and we never held a vote. And why was it? The filibuster. So I just wanted to tie that back in. And then we were going to vote on first contract, because at least when you form a union, then often now you can't get a first contract. And so we never held a vote on that. We have to hold a vote in the Senate on the PRO Act. I mean, I would rather us hold a vote and lose than not hold a vote, because the American people need to see where we stand. But of course, I think if we hold the vote, we will win, as long as we reform the filibuster.
Thank you, Senator. And I would just add that it would end the racist right-to-work law that have plagued 28 states, making it harder for more workers to join unions as well. So it's a really comprehensive bill, has a lot of provisions, and really appreciate you asking the question, Samantha. Okay, the next question is going to come from Danielle. Danielle.
Hey, thanks, Graham, and thank you both for being here today and for the opportunity to ask a couple questions. As we all know, the bipartisan infrastructure framework deal has passed the Senate. And so my question is, are there any insights you're able to share with us today about the commitment to bring BIF up for a vote by September 27th? And what are your thoughts on this? And also, I'd just like to add that we appreciate your support for advancing the BIF legislation.
Thank you, Danielle. And I assume that question is for me, because it has already passed the Senate. I know that leadership is committed to passing a robust infrastructure bill, like the bipartisan bill that the Senate passed. But at the same time, it's not all we need to do, because childcare is also infrastructure. Caregiving is also infrastructure. And the pieces that are in the American Jobs Plan and the American Families Plan are really important part of that conversation. And that's why House leadership is committed to passing not just one of them, but both of them.
Yeah, and I'll add that there's a massive investment in housing in the reconciliation bill, or part 2 of the infrastructure. And that is essential. There's also a massive investment in forest management, thinning our forests so that they look more like natural forests. They're more fire resilient, plus it produces saw logs and jobs. And so these features are incredibly important. And it's important that the House really keep the Senate accountable for acting on the second half of the package.
I appreciate it. I just want to add one more thing too, that in the Education and Labor Committee section, for example, of the reconciliation bill, the Build Back Better bill, which we're so committed to getting done, that's where we have the childcare funding. That's where we have robust investments in workforce, because as we are, people getting back to the workforce, as we are making those investments in infrastructure, we need people to do the work. And so those workforce programs are so important as well. And I know Secretary Walsh, I've spoken with the Secretary and with the administration about the importance of those workforce investments as well. And also, we know climate change is really wreaking havoc on this country. We must take action and transition to a clean energy economy. There are provisions in the Build Back Better plan to help people transition from fossil fuel jobs to clean energy jobs, or jobs in their region, locality, where they can make a living wage. So it is really critical that we get both of these pieces done, because if we pass the infrastructure bill, but we don't have the workforce to build it across the country, it's not going to be effective. So we're very, very committed to both the Build Back Better with the American Jobs Plan and the American Families Plan, and the infrastructure bill. They're both important.
Thank you both. And thank you, Danielle, for asking the question. So the next question is going to come from Nastya. Nastya, the floor is yours. I think you're on mute. Yeah. I think you're still on mute. there anything we can do on the back end to help? Yeah, can't hear you. Well, let's come back to you. We'll try to figure out the audio. So the next question is going to be from Owen. Owen, the floor is yours.
Hi, Senator and Congresswoman. Thank you so much for being here today. My question is, what is the standard the PRO Act will use for independent contractors, and how do you address concerns that freelancers may lose work?
Who'd like to go first?
Yeah, I can't provide you the exact test, but I know that what we need to do is make sure that people who are actually working in the capacity of an employee are actually treated as employees, and people who are independent contractors are independent contractors. So part of the problem has been some of the rulings from the NLRB. Fortunately, with President Biden, we'll have a more functional NLRB, but we'll be working on that to make sure that we really do recognize that the employers who misclassify are doing a disservice to their workforce.
And on the types of things that distinguish between an employee and a contractor are things like, do you run your own schedule? Do you use all your own equipment? Do you work for multiple different companies rather than just a single company? Those types of standards. And so it brings those to bear in an effective manner to quit this end run that we're seeing right now.
Absolutely. And nothing about the PRO Act takes rights away from freelancers. It just gives workers that are legitimately employees that right to organize if they so choose. So, yeah, thank you both. And thanks for that question. Owen, I believe Nastia might be back and ready to rock with some good audio.
Are we good? Can we hear me?
You're good.
Very good.
Awesome.
Welcome back.
All right. So my question is, as a healthcare professional, I can understand and appreciate the immense challenges facing those who provide care to our children and to elderly and those that need this care. When the bill to fund our infrastructure passes, how long will it take for those benefits to be felt?
That's a great question, Nastia, and it's something that we're working on right now as we're getting ready in the Education and Labor Committee it's called markup, to move our portion of the Build Back Better plan out of the committee. We're going to do everything we can to make sure that the benefits are as immediate and as broad as possible. And that's what we're advocating for, both in childcare and healthcare providers, and making sure that we are making the changes that we need, recognizing the importance of the work that you do.
And Natia, I just want to note that those who are in the caretaking mode this past year, including all of our healthcare professionals, have done just an exceptionally important role at a critical time. My wife, Mary, is a nurse. She works in home hospice. So every home she goes into, there's somebody who's very ill. And she did a lot of the COVID testing in those homes. And I would read about the stress healthcare workers were experiencing in the newspaper, but then I would see it through her and her fellow employees, what they were going through. And I think about that setting and how important it was that my wife was able, as a union member, to know that there was an organization to make sure that they would step forward and make sure that the frontline healthcare workers were not exploited in that setting, that they were getting protective equipment and training. And quite frankly, in the beginning, the healthcare organization didn't do a very good job. And it was so important to have advocates and union strength to say, hey, this is not acceptable. This has to be acted on. We have to do better. You're putting your own people at risk and so forth. But a huge thank you to all those who have been on the front line of the care economy, whether it's with seniors, with children, or with those who have been afflicted by disease in this past year.
Thank you for that question, and thank you both for the thoughtful responses. Senator Merkley, I'm going to ask a quick question of you about just if you could instill the urgency of the next couple months with all of the things that you laid out in terms of the things that are on the line for working people, from voting rights to the infrastructure packages to the PRO Act. I'd love for you to just sort of give us another boost on why the next couple months are so important.
No, the timeline is incredibly challenging because already the census information has gone out, so states are engaged in redistricting as we are here in Oregon, and so it's very important to act now in passing the For the People Act to end the gerrymandering that will be written into these state laws. Now we're rewriting the bill so that the states that gerrymander will have to tear that script up and start again, but it's going to be harder and harder as time passes to force states to do that. And then in terms of voting rights, we have 14 states that have passed laws and we'll be putting them into effect. And again, it's much more effective to stop those laws before they go into effect than be trying to turn them down later. I'm really hoping that we combine the John Lewis Voting Rights Act with the For the People Act. So we not only set national standards on access to the ballot, but we also say that any future actions by states that have in the past suppressed voting rights have to get pre-clearance. So it isn't striking down laws after the fact, it's preventing them from going into effect. That was the genius of the Voting Rights Act that we passed in the past that was so powerful and so effective in stopping this sort of manipulation. And then just think of the clock in terms of the fact that as we go into the fall, people are starting to declare their campaigns for next November. And so you start to have this shift from the policy side to the campaign side that just accelerates over time, which is why it's always kind of the conventional wisdom with whatever you're going to get done that's big, you got to get it done in the first year of the 2-year span. Well, that first year is running out. We'll be halfway through September before the Senate comes back in. And then there's only like 10 legislative days in September. Then there's various religious holidays and there's Thanksgiving and so on and so forth. So we have a very compressed timeline to get these things done, but we've got to vote and pass on the reconciliation bill, on the For the People Voting Rights Act, on John Lewis and the PRO Act. We got to get all of this done. I feel like we need to get all of this done really before the end of October.
Thanks so much, Senator. I appreciate that. Appreciate you both being with us. I did just get word that Senator Wyden was able to jump on, so we're just going to give him, we're almost out of time, but want to give him a few minutes just to say hi. So thank you all. Thank you to the workers.
Thank you.
Senator and Congresswoman. Appreciate you being here. So now it's my pleasure to introduce Senator Ron Wyden, or perhaps Chairman Wyden is more appropriate today. Whether it was prior to the November elections as he played a key role as ranking member of the Senate Finance Committee, or today as he holds the gavel on this powerful committee, of course, because elections matter. To say that the chairman has had a crucial role in the relief and recovery efforts of the federal government throughout the pandemic, that would be quite an understatement. From his ability to negotiate last year the game-changing supercharged unemployment benefits, as he would often call it, in the minority party, or his current role in crafting some of the most transformational investment packages in modern history, we're proud to call Senator and Chairman Ron Wyden our senator and a friend of the labor movement, a co-sponsor of the PRO Act, along with Senator Merkley and Congresswoman Bonamici, and leader who was willing at the drop of a hat to send a letter to the Mondelez Nabisco CEO, along with Senator Merkley, as I mentioned earlier, in support of the striking bakers just a few weeks ago. I'd like to introduce my friend and Oregon's senior U.S. Senator, Ron Wyden. Is the senator there? Thought I saw. Maybe he just accidentally logged out. Okay. So you heard his introduction. Why don't, for the interest of time, I'm going to go ahead and say a few closing remarks and make sure that you have access to all of the ways that you can take action. So again, please give another warm Oregon Labor virtual applause and appreciation for our panelists, for our special guests, and for our collective work to make and keep Oregon union strong. Now, this is our time. Public approval for unions is at a 50-year high, 68% and rising, including 77% of young people approve of unions today. They're excited about unions because they see our movement as the solution to our broken economic rules, the only set of organizations out there, day in, day out, fighting for working people. That's why over 60 million Americans say they would join a union if they could. And this also reinforces how vital the North American labor movement is to defending our democracy, as you heard earlier, pulling the pendulum back from rising and rampant inequality, and a key partner in so many fights for justice ahead. But that means it's up to all of us to recommit, redouble, and re-energize for the fights ahead. So rest up today, get ready for the fights ahead tomorrow. This is our time. This is a critical moment, and we need each and every one of you to capitalize on it, because working people from coast to coast, the fairness of our economy, and the future of the working class truly depends on it. It sounds like the senator's internet might have frozen. Do we see the senator yet backstage? Okay. So unfortunately, the senator wasn't able to join for a couple maybe technical and timing reasons, but we appreciate his willingness to join nonetheless. Now, I do want to draw your attention to the slides. We are at the time mark. We said we'd keep it to an hour. This is an action-oriented day, and we really want to make sure that as you rest up, take stock of the work ahead. Look at these links that we've shown here. Thank you, stay safe, and we'll see you on the picket line.
So the company spies, she'd take the dare, she didn't care. She always organized the guys, and she always got her way. When she asked for better pay, she showed her card to the National Guard. Honey, this is what they say.